Australia is literally giving away land for free. Not in the Outback where your nearest neighbor is a kangaroo 400 kilometers away. We're talking about actual towns with schools, hospitals, and infrastructure handing you property with zero price tag attached. But here's what nobody tells you about free land. The land isn't the cost, the commitment is. One family relocated to claim their free plot, built their dream home, and watched their equity evaporate when the regional economy collapsed. Another discovered their free land came with mandatory building requirements that cost $350,000 to fulfill. And while Melbourne properties sell for $1.2 million, entire blocks sit empty in towns desperate enough to pay you to move there. Some of these towns lost 40% of their population in a decade. Others are mining-dependent time bombs one commodity crash away from becoming ghost towns. And by the end, you lions understand exactly why free land exists and whether it is opportunity or a trap disguised as generosity. Australia has a population distribution problem that's getting worse every year. 85% of Australians live within 50 kilometers of the coast while the interior slowly empties out. Regional councils are getting desperate. Schools are closing because there aren't enough students. Hospitals struggle to attract doctors. Local businesses shut down because the customer base keeps shrinking. So they're trying something radical: free land programs designed to reverse decades of population decline. But free land only works if the fundamentals support it: jobs, services, community, future growth potential. Without those, you're not getting free land. You're inheriting someone else's abandoned investment. Number 15, NIL, Victoria, the refugee resettlement experiment. NIL sits in Victoria's Wimmera region, 365 kilometers northwest of Melbourne. In 2010, the town's population had fallen to 1,800 and dropping. The local meat processing plant couldn't find enough staff. Shops were closing, the primary school had empty classrooms. Then NIL tried something different. They partnered with refugee resettlement agencies and brought in families from Karen, Myanmar. The program offered housing assistance and guaranteed employment at the meatworks, and it worked. The population stabilized. New businesses opened, but here's the reality check. This worked because employment was guaranteed. If you're considering NIL today, the question isn't whether land is affordable. It's whether the meatworks will still be operating in 10 years. Because if that plant closes, NIL's population will collapse faster than it grew. Number 14, Morawa, Western Australia. Free land with a construction deadline. Morawa is 370 kilometers north of Perth in the Grain Belt. The town launched a free residential land program offering blocks to anyone willing to build within 2 years. The offer sounds incredible until you read the requirements. You must commence construction within 12 months. You must complete construction within 24 months. And if you fail any requirement, the land reverts back to the council. One family took the deal, started building, then discovered the local builder they hired went bankrupt mid-construction. They had 6 months left on their deadline with half a house and no contractor. They finished the build but spent $380,000 doing it. That's not free land. That's a $380,000 gamble with a 2-year countdown timer. Morawa's program exists because the town's population dropped from 1,200 to under 800 in 20 years. Free land won't fix structural unemployment. It just transfers the risk from council to desperate buyers. Number 13, Quilpie, Queensland, where free land meets extreme isolation. Quilpie sits a whopping 950 kilometers west of Brisbane. Now, the local council is offering free residential blocks of land, but you really need to understand what you're buying into. The nearest major hospital is 200 kilometers away. The nearest university, a staggering 800 kilometers. In summer, temperatures regularly blast past 45 degrees Celsius. The town's economy is all about opal mining, cattle grazing, and artisan tourism. The free land program did attract a few families at first. But many left within 3 years when they realized their kids had no educational options beyond primary school. One couple from Brisbane thought they'd found paradise, but 18 months later, the husband's mining job ended and there were no other jobs. They couldn't sell their newly built house because there were 0 buyers. Now they're trapped paying a mortgage on a home they can't even live in. That's not opportunity, that's a financial trap with a free land ribbon on top. Number 12, Q, Western Australia, the gold town offering land and hope. Q sits for 120 kilometers northeast of Geraldton in the heart of gold country. During the 1890s gold rush, Q had 10,000 residents. Today, fewer than 300 people remain. The town offers free or heavily subsidized residential land to anyone willing to build and stay. Small-scale gold prospecting is still viable. Tourism from Perth-based prospectors provides seasonal income. But Q's sustainability depends entirely on gold prices. When gold is high, the town breathes. When gold prices drop, the town suffocates. You're not buying into a diversified economy. You're buying into a single commodity gamble where your property value rises and falls with international gold markets. One family built their home during a gold boom, watched property values climb for 3 years, then watched them collapse 40% when gold prices corrected. They're still there, but not by choice. They can't sell without losing their entire investment. Number 11, Jamestown, South Australia. Free land in a town that refuses to die. Jamestown sits 200 kilometers north of Adelaide. Population has dropped from 1,800 to 1,400 over 2 decades. The council launched a land incentive scheme offering blocks at heavily reduced prices, sometimes free with building commitments. The local hospital still operates. The area's schools are still open. Small manufacturers still employ locals. This isn't a mining town dependent on commodity prices. But slow decline creates its own trap. Property values stagnate. Number 10, Ravensthorpe, Western Australia. The nickel town that died and resurrected, Ravensthorpe is 530 kilometers southeast of Perth. In 2007, BHP opened a nickel mine and the town exploded. New houses were built, families relocated. Property prices surged. Then in 2009, the mine closed during the global financial crisis. The town collapsed overnight. Houses sat empty. Families walked away from mortgages. The mine reopened in 2017 at reduced capacity. The town is trying again. Free land is available. But everyone living there knows it could end tomorrow. Nickel prices are volatile. The mine operates on narrow margins. One extended commodity downturn and Ravensthorpe becomes a ghost town for the second time in 20 years. You're not getting free land. You're inheriting someone else's abandoned mining boom dream with a countdown timer nobody can see. Number 9, Carnama, Western Australia. Where technology killed the town, Carnama sits in the northern wheat belt, 300 kilometers from Perth. The town's population peaked around 500 in the 1980s. Today, it's closer to 250. The council offers free land with building commitments. But here's what killed Carnama. Broadacre farming became so mechanized that one family can now farm 5,000 hectares with minimal labor. When farms needed 20 workers, those workers lived in town, spent money locally, sent kids to school, supported businesses. Now those 20 workers are one family with GPS-guided machinery. The school is down to 20 students. Businesses close because there's no customer base. Free land can't reverse that. You can build a beautiful home on a free block, but your children will have 3 classmates and your nearest social peer group will be 80 kilometers away. Isolation isn't romantic when it's permanent. Number 8, Hopetoun, Western Australia. Coastal free land with a climate problem, Hopetoun sits on the southern coast, 570 kilometers southeast of Perth. The town offers land incentives to attract residents. Unlike inland towns, Hopetoun has genuine lifestyle appeal. Beaches, fishing, stunning coastline, but it has two critical problems. Zero economic base beyond seasonal tourism and increasing climate vulnerability. with bushfire risk. In 2015, the Esperance fires came within kilometers of Hopetoun. Residents evacuated, insurance premiums spiked. If you're not retired with independent income, employment options are limited to fishing industry work or driving 200 kilometers to Ravensthorpe's mine. One family relocated from Perth for the coastal lifestyle. 3 years later, their insurance premiums had doubled and they couldn't find stable work. They were trapped between a mortgage and an unsellable property in a town with 8 months of quiet and 4 months of tourists. Number 7. Menzies, Western Australia. The gold town with more history than people, Menzies sits 130 kilometers north of Kalgoorlie. In the 1890s gold rush, 5,000 people called this place home. Today, fewer than 80 remain. The town offers free land to anyone willing to build. There's one general store that opens sporadically. The pub closed years ago. The school has fewer than 10 students. Medical services require a 130-kilometer drive to Kalgoorlie. One prospective resident described visiting Menzies as stepping into a post-apocalyptic movie set. Abandoned buildings line empty streets. The silence is profound and unsettling. The free land exists because nobody wants it. Gold mining is still active in the broader region, but Menzies itself has been bypassed by modern operations. The town's population is almost entirely retirees who have lived there for decades and literally have nowhere else to go. This isn't a community with potential, it's a town in its final decades, waiting for the last resident to turn off the lights. Number 6. Kambalda, Western Australia. A town where 3,000 jobs vanished and free land appeared. Kambalda sits just 60 kilometers from Kalgoorlie. During the nickel boom, houses here sold for up to $400,000. The town was alive, with young families everywhere, schools full, and sporting clubs thriving. Then came 2024. In a single announcement, BHP suspended its Nickel West operations, and almost 3,000 jobs disappeared overnight. The town emptied faster than anyone expected. For sale signs faded under the sun before buyers ever came. Housing prices collapsed from $400,000 to barely $150,000, and today every second house sits empty. Now the council is offering free land and building incentives to anyone willing to move in. But there is a question no one can answer. Why would you move to a town that just lost its entire economic base? BHP says operations might restart in 2027, maybe, only if nickel prices recover. One family who stayed behind described life here as living in limbo. They can't sell without taking devastating losses, and they can't stay without employment. The free land in Kambalda isn't opportunity. It is desperation, a council trying to keep the town's heart beating long enough to wait for a miracle that may never come. Number 4. Jurien Bay, Western Australia. The coastal town that couldn't sustain growth. Jurien Bay sits 220 kilometers north of Perth on the Turquoise Coast. Unlike dying mining towns, Jurien Bay offers genuine coastal lifestyle appeal, fishing, diving, pristine beaches. The council ran aggressive land incentive programs, including free blocks to attract residents and developers, and it worked temporarily. The population grew, new subdivisions appeared. Businesses opened, then the reality hit. Employment options were limited to fishing, tourism, and construction. Once the building boom ended, construction workers left. Tourism is seasonal, providing income for months a year and uncertainty the other 8. The town's infrastructure was designed for a much smaller population. Rates increased to cover maintenance costs, driving away the very people the free land programs attracted. One developer who took advantage of the free land incentives built 10 homes, sold 3, and now holds 7 empty properties he can't move. Jurien Bay's free land program created artificial growth without sustainable economic foundations. Number 3. Korda, Western Australia. The farming town offering land nobody wants. Korda sits in the central wheat belt, 236 kilometers northeast of Perth. The town's population has dropped from 350 to around 180 in 30 years. The council offers free residential land with building commitments, but the offer reveals desperation rather than opportunity. Quilpie has one general store, one hotel, and a primary school with declining enrollment. The nearest high school is 90 kilometers away. Medical services require 60-kilometer drives. The town exists because farms still operate nearby, but those farms employ fewer people every year as mechanization increases. One resident described Quilpie's future bluntly. In 20 years, we'll be a pub, a grain silo, and memories. The Freeland program attracted exactly 2 families in 5 years. One stayed. One left after 18 months when they realized their teenage children faced 2-hour daily commutes to high school. Quilpie isn't offering free land because it's growing. It is offering free land because it is dying, and the council is trying anything to slow the inevitable. Number 2, Wailuna, Western Australia, the remotest free land offer in Australia. Wailuna sits 950 kilometers northeast of Perth in the northern goldfields. The town offers free land, but you need to understand what remote truly means. The nearest city is Kalgoorlie, 560 kilometers away. Summer temperatures exceed 45 degrees regularly. The town's economy depends entirely on gold mining. Population is around 200. The council's free land program targets permanent residents, but permanent residency in Wailuna requires accepting profound isolation. Medical emergencies require Royal Flying Doctor Service evacuation. Education beyond primary school requires boarding school or relocation. One mining engineer considered accepting free land in Wailuna. He visited twice before declining. His assessment was blunt. It is free land in a place where land has no value because living there long-term isn't viable for most families. Wailuna's free land exists because the remoteness makes normal residential settlement nearly impossible. You're not being offered opportunity. You're being asked to be a geographic placeholder in Australia's emptiest spaces. Number 1, Leonora, Western Australia. The gold town still offering land 50 years after the boom. Leonora sits 237 kilometers north of Kalgoorlie. During the gold rush era, 7,000 people lived here. Today, around 400 remain. The town has offered free or subsidized land for decades with minimal success. Here's why Leonora tops this list. It represents the ultimate failed experiment in using free land to reverse regional decline. The town has schools, a hospital, functioning infrastructure, and genuine gold mining operations nearby. On paper, it should work, but it doesn't. Population continues falling. The free land blocks sit empty year after year. Young people leave immediately after school. Businesses struggle. The aged care facility is the largest employer. One longtime resident explained the paradox perfectly. Free land doesn't matter when there's no reason to live here. My kids all moved to Perth. My grandkids will never move back. The town is full of old people waiting to die and miners who fly in Tuesday and fly out Friday. That's not a community. Leonora's free land program has run for decades without reversing decline because land was never the problem. Economic opportunity, social connection, and future prospects were. You can't fix those with free blocks and building incentives. The pattern you can't ignore. These 15 towns share a common story. Free land programs that reveal desperation rather than opportunity. Councils trying to reverse decades of economic decline by giving away the one thing they still control, land. But land without jobs is worthless. Land without services is isolation. Land without community is loneliness with property taxes. The smartest question you can ask about free land isn't how do I claim it, it's why is it free? Because in every single case, the answer reveals the exact reason you probably shouldn't move there.